Michael, I am so excited to talk to you, dude. I mean, it kind of feels like we've been working forever. I know it's been, what, 4 or 5 years now? But, dude, like, even though you're like halfway across the world from me, I just feel like we're able to connect so often and we have such a strong bond. But before we dive into all this stuff, I would like you to just introduce yourself to those who don't know you and please explain what you do for Modus and how long you've been with us.
Hey Jay, yeah, you're absolutely right about all those things. To introduce myself, my name is Michael Tintiuc. I'm with Modus for about, just a little bit over 4 years, and I've started off as a backend engineer, and I'm now proud to call myself as a principal consulting engineer at Modus. And boy, it was a ride, and still is, and yeah, I'm loving every day of it. So thank you for allowing everything, all of the possibilities of growth, etc. So, yeah.
Very cool. So your journey started with us circa 2017. So if you don't mind, like taking us back in time at that point, how did you learn about us? And if you don't mind sharing, like what were some of the criteria that made you decide to work with a company like ours?
All right. I was looking for something fresh and something new. That's how I found the company. I've just sent out about 50 resumes, and actually, I am. That's one of the first years that I've discovered open source. Like truly, I was aware of it, but that's when I decided it's going to be like part of my daily routine, so to speak. So instead of like downloading a template for your CV, I decided to write my own small CV program that would output into PDF, that would take a JSON input and make it a web page or a PDF, for instance. And I decided that would be part of my CV as well. So I sent it out. And Modus Create was one of the companies that replied. And it was interesting because I have never worked for a lot of people my whole life, like directly. This is like literally my third job in my life. It was always like more of a freelance kind of thing throughout the years, and that it felt weird. But as soon as I started like my first conversation, I was like, wow, this is nothing like what I felt like before. On my first call, I was discussing Donovan, the singer-songwriter, like my paisley shirt that I was designing, and it was everything. So it wasn't just a tech job. And before, I was looking like people doing the same interviews in suits and ties, and I don't mind a sharp dresser, but I don't want to feel like that on a daily basis. And the funny thing during that call, I discovered that Modus Create was also, it has its roots in open source and how heavy they are. There is actually a funny story in that as well, like joining Modus. As part of my onboarding, there was a task that I had to create, like write an algorithm. I don't actually remember it. So I wrote it in PHP, and for some reason, I've posted it on GitHub. It was an open repository, etc. But apparently the client wanted it taken down and closed. But I wasn't quite happy about it, and I said, it's my code I've written. There's no PII there at all, so there's everything is just full bar, etc. So I will not do that. This is my code. It's open source, and everybody can use it as a reference for that algorithm. And to my surprise, I thought that okay, I blew it, but I stood my ground. I stood my ground, and I was faithful to my beliefs, and probably I will not get hired for that. It was for that exact reason. But no, Modus Create stood by me, and even though I didn't work a single day at the job, and they said, you're absolutely right, this is your code, this is how we do it, and we found a common ground, and I got hired, and I'm happy now ever since. And we've done a bunch of open source stuff here.
When you and I first started working together, so I'm thinking summer 2017. So if I can recall correctly, you joined maybe in the spring or early in the year 2017, and
Yep.
you and I first interfaced summer 2017. Client situation had hit an all-time like difficulty level. Trust had tanked a little bit due to all types of environmental issues, and so I was tasked to kind of come in and assess what was going on, but also work with the team to accelerate and removal of roadblocks and accelerate development. So if you don't mind, like, walking through, what was it like the very first time you and I got, like, from your perspective, and I'll be happy to relay mine, from your perspective, what was it like working with someone like me, who tends to have a very, like, tense, for lack of a better term, demeanor and position?
Well, it felt like as an additive to the whole complicated situation, and it felt like everything, like the sky was falling. And on top of that, you got a co-founder thrown at you who's going to come with a stick and just point at you like you're doing something wrong. And I felt, right, my days here are numbered, so I'm better pack my things up. But we joined a similar call on Zoom as this one, for instance, and you just asked me, like, what happened. I gave you a description, and you asked me how you're going to do it, and I'm like, right, I'm just going to fire up Vim, and I'm going to fire up this diff merger, which is an open source tool, and you were like, what? you're doing it by hand? You don't have a UI program doing it for you? Like, nope. And then I explained it to you why, because there were several hundred conflicts, and it wasn't like no matter, like, if God would have written that UI tool for you to figure out all of those commit, you would break your leg there. So yeah, and we did it manually, one by one, and the situation was resolved, and it was the fire is extinguished, and everybody was happy by the end of it. But the coolest thing, like, as you said, I was still fresh. I joined March 1st, and we met like a few months after, like 2 or 3 months after I arrived at Modus. And I never felt like I will be so calmed by the presence of a co-founder. And at that point, I had no idea who you are, what kind of personality you are. Just the title was by itself, was kind of scary. But gotten to know you within a couple of minutes, it felt like we connected, and a great friendship was starting out, and yeah, it's just great.
I appreciate that, dude. I mean, I'll be honest. Whenever I describe Modus and how we operate, I actually reflect on that time, and literally, I can recall being in the conference room at the client site, going through the 4,300 line-ish PHP file that had JavaScript, HTML, CSS, SQL, including PHP. Did I mention HTML? Like, literally, there were like 5 or 6 different technologies all merged into one. I remember thinking, like, this is like a hairball. It was that messy. And I really appreciated, one, that you were welcoming, okay? Because you mentioned, a founder gets thrown into the situation, it can invoke anxiety. Mm-hmm. And I remember thinking, when I was like charged with trying to remove roadblocks, I thought, let's just connect as peers, because ultimately the goal is not to blame, it's to identify the issue, resolve it, and move on. And I appreciated, again, using the open source mindset, how you took the time to explain how you were thinking, the tools you were using. And, the idea that we did find that middle ground to remove the blocker and then move forward, to me, that was the foundation, like you said, to set up an awesome relationship. I appreciate what you did, and I really love, and I thank you for doing that, because I've had a lot of folks just clamp up or close up, and they're just like, it's a founder, I'm just going to shut down. And I'm like, I will help you. My job is to be there for you. Ultimately, your success is my success. So I'm always going to have that orientation. So thank you for doing that.
There's a couple of moments in since I joined that kind of were like staple, they were, you will never forget them. They made it part as who you are now with Modus, and that was one of them. And most importantly, as you said, you were also open-minded, and you weren't like, all right, we have this written down documentation that we only use tool A, B, and C, and on this OS, please reinstall everything. You're not going to do it your way. We just have to solve a problem. It doesn't matter how. So yeah.
Let's fast forward to, I would say, the better part of 2017. We have this project that we started in the fall. I'm talking about the video game, the thing for the Ardu boy, Evade, version 1. we started this project as an opportunity to create a gift that was rather unique for our clients back then. And you jumped on to try to develop this game or work with us nights and weekends, dude. So I'm wondering what was going through your mind? What helped you make the decision to jump on this project?
Well, it was quite easy. First of all, I'm a sucker for video games, and you just posted like we're looking for people to help us, etc. We want people to have experience in this in such and such languages, and I didn't have any of it. Like I knew a little bit of C, a good part of Python, but nobody wanted Python at that project. And I decided, well, okay, that's a good way to learn C, write a video game, I guess. And I jumped in, and wow, it was a blast. Yeah.
You were learning C with Evade 2.5. What are there certain like opportunities of like growth where you're like, dude, I totally now understand this because of the project? Like any aha moments?
Yeah, absolutely. Since I was coming from a PHP background, everything was object oriented, and I never done anything like I haven't done much functional programming or something close to the metal as C or something as simple as that. And since that was my first C project, I was doing mostly support and graphics since my background is design. But I was given the opportunity to write an important piece of code that would basically transcode our bitmap images into I believe it was C header files. So it would take every pixel or something like that. Yeah,
it was a vector.
And,
We SVG to vector. Remember that?
right. And initially, because I didn't know C good enough, so I've written that in Python. And then Mike Schwartz said, well, is it a Python project? And I said, no, it's a C project. Better rewrite it. I'm like, yes, sir. And that's how I learned it. Yeah, learned it. It's great. I mean, it's one of the things that I would have probably only thought to learn unless you actually jump in a project with a lot of people and you have people depend on you, so you better bring your A game here.
You saw the opportunity to connect two open source communities together, and you did so. This is the Ionic View connector. And so if you don't mind, like let's again talk about what was the impetus to get that started and what was the experience like working on that open source code.
It was great. It was I was having my time off. I was at the pool, and I was just chilling. I had my laptop with me, and I was just fiddling with something. And Grigor said that there's this new version of Ionic coming out, and they're ditching like this one framework approach, and they're opening up the gates to the whole wide world, so anybody can implement their framework. And let's do something with Vue, because Vue is hot and cool, and apparently it doesn't have any connectors to it. And the initial idea was just the focus on Vue mainly. So the Ionic part came a little bit later, and I was really interested in doing something with Golang and probably Vue, like a demo app. But Grigor said no, like we have to connect like these two cool new versions that are coming down, and he had the vision behind it. And I was standing there in flip-flops by the pool, and we were discussing all of this tech thing in English, and being from Eastern Europe, that kind of looks funny at a pool. People don't expect that. Yeah. And when it just clicked, we were on Zoom call for about like 1.5 hours discussing that possible implementations, and that's when we kind of landed with the whole Beep idea, being the app that kind of checks your passwords if they're hacked or not through an Have I Been Pwned API. Which, come to think, a couple of years later, it's everywhere now. Firefox has it, Bitwarden has it, a lot, like mind-blowing. So we landed on that idea, and I'm just sitting at my laptop. Again, it's just like with C, just like with my first picking up JavaScript. I have no idea what I'm doing. Like, this is completely fresh. I've never used Ionic. I've never used Vue. I just heard of those things, but I've never written any code. So it was something completely new, and I felt like I was a kid trying to fix a problem that I had no idea. And it was just jumping into the void and just a leap of faith, and it just came out of it, and it was an experience. So the culture book you guys created, like I wanted to thank you for the company that you've built. It still amazes me that we still have people like you guys, because it's absolutely 200% people only, and it's just, this is like, it rings so many bells to me, the right ones, as to coming from the skateboarding community and having that locals only approach, and like your people come first. That's something you don't see in the world too often in general, especially in the tech industry. And being a tech consultancy, that's even like, oh, most of the time client comes first, and yeah, you know that.
Yeah.
And when I was reading that book, I was, when I closed it and I finished it, I was so happy that I didn't see like those X amount of cups of coffee drank and Y amount of projects delivered. Like, nobody cares about that. Who even counts that kind of stuff? Like, the stories that I've read, it was like a series of miniature like novels or something. Like, I've known a lot of the people from that book, and I've worked with them extensively for years, but I've never known some of their background stories. And it's not something you share on a daily basis, but come to think of that is like on the forefront for Modus. That was like one of the other moments that I was talking about. That was like, this is the right place to be. I like it here very much, and these people are doing just an amazing job in supporting this, and most importantly, growing and not leaving that the idea that originated the company behind. You know, never forgetting where your roots are and why you started it in the first place.
Right on, dude. Yeah, I mean, I appreciate all that, and you and the surrounding people who have entered the walled garden of Modus Land help make it what it is. And it's an evolving thing, and ultimately the experience that we leave behind is about people